Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode.
So, Mike, I downloaded your book last night, your new book, Mission Driven, The Path to a Life of Purpose. It was a pre-release, so the audience knows. So it was only available last night, so I downloaded it on my Kindle. And it's your second book. We had you on the podcast about 2 years ago when you wrote your first book, Never Enough, which was very well received by our audience. But before I get into your new book, Mission Driven, I think it's important for you to tell the audience about your 1162 Foundation and what you do for Gold Star families. First of all, what a Gold Star family is and what you do for Gold Star families with the proceeds from your book and a lot of the public speaking engagements that you do.
Yeah. So John, and I'll just, I can't help but say Mac and Cap, two best friends.
Yeah.
Like I just want to say thank you for having me here. Thank you for the continued impact that you've had and for this great nation and for all the people that you positively influence every time you guys speak. The thing for me is, like you just mentioned, is how do you create value and impact and go do great things? I've been, privileged to be a Navy SEAL for 20 years, to work in two White Houses, both Presidents Bush and Obama, to run or attend hundreds of meetings in the White House Situation Room. And so I've really seen like the far ends of the spectrum, like at the highest national policy levels, and then the pointiest end of the spear on dark, scary missions in the Navy SEALs and everything in between. And so with that, like every SEAL of my era, I've buried 75 friends, probably 15 or 20, like real brothers of mine. And that is something that I live with my whole life. And so one of my mission and my purpose is to really, besides elevating society through things like technology and impact and whatnot, is to really think about the very day-to-day lives of the Gold Star families. Those are the families of the fallen who have, died in combat or died by suicide afterward. Those individuals gave their last measure for the nation, but their spouses, their children, they go on living that ultimate sacrifice every single day. And so I founded the 1162 Foundation. That's Kennedy started the SEALs on 1/1/62. That's the name. That's the secret behind the name. And it is an organization with no employees, no fanfare, no website really, other than like a Give Butter fundraising website. It's very hard to find us on the net. We are IRS approved and everything as a 501c3. And what we do is we very quietly pay off Gold Star Widows mortgages. I've been privileged so far to pay off 12 of these mortgages in my life so far. And John, with Mission Driven, I hope to continue to do another 12 and 12 after that, and just keep on rolling and continue to make a positive difference for the world.
Amazing. So you took a break from being the chief operating officer at VMware, right? And then you decided to write Mission Driven. Can you talk a little bit about why?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I was really fortunate. I helped transform VMware. We sold into Broadcom for, I say $69 billion, but as soon as I said that, Michael Dell, who chairs our board, quickly reminded me, Mike, it was $94 billion. He's right. I'm wrong. It was, the market, while we went through 18 months of, I'll just call it politely regulatory process around the globe. There are much less polite ways to say that, but as we went through that process, we basically increased in value thanks to the Broadcom AI, chip era, beginning of the chip era macro tailwinds, and so anyways. As I decided to exit VMware after the sale, and I had 3 months of the, hey, call me if you need me kind of thing, and I didn't get any calls from Broadcom. They were talented and did the integration, and so post closing, I had 3 months, and I used that 3 months to write the very vast majority of Mission Driven, and I wrote it because I've had a lot of conversations after Never Enough came out that were things like, hey, Mike, how do I really think about meaning? What does meaning mean? What is purpose? But how do you get real with it? What does it really mean? Like, it's great to have this high in the sky cloud kind of level answers, but how do you really bring it to life? And so that's kind of the main reason that I wrote it. But of course, as I just spoke about, which you very politely teased out, is that it's not just to go help all the readers, but it's also to help pay off mortgages and create what I see as like a win-win situation.
Yeah. Well, one of the key lessons in the book is not what you want to be, but who you want to be. So you state in the book that your who is formed by the principles that guide you. It's the aspirational person that you're hoping to be, the one you see, the one you want to see in the mirror when you look on the mirror. Can you talk or expand a little bit on that? Kind
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. It's really one of the key points in the book and kind of weaves through the first half of the book. It's I kind of had this, I don't know, epiphany or aha moment when our daughter was much younger. She's 24 now, but when she was growing up, my wife and I never asked her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" We would always say, "Who do you want to be?" Because the who is that deeper you. Like let's not connect self-esteem or I say success in air quotes based on a what and a title and a position. Think about the deeper who. What's your orientation to helping others? What's your work ethic? How when people are mean, are you able to go become calmer and help defuse a situation? You know, whatever. I could go on, but the values, that deeper who, transcend your whole life. I'm somebody who's moved roles a lot in my life, but the who is very common and thematic to our lives. I'm privileged to be 54 years old now, and through my 54 point something years of my life, I've always been working on that foundation, and I think that to me is the most important thing, because we can, if we have our who figured out, then we can map back and compare what we're doing and say, is what we're doing giving us energy and meaning and reward in however we define it? And the last thing I'll say on this is that, a lot of people, when they give advice, say their answer says basically, in essence, you should do what I did because I'm the smartest person I know, I'm the coolest person I know, therefore you should do what I did. And
Yeah.
there's nothing that could be further from the truth. Like, what I chose in my life isn't what's best for anybody who I'm giving advice through. So
Wow.
so in Mission Driven, what I really tried to do, hopefully successfully, the readers will determine that, but was to really draw out, do you know who you are? And because that, like, what I think for you doesn't matter. What matters is what you think for yourself.
Yeah, you see it at all stages of life, though, too, Mike. Johnny and I see it a lot with people that their who's attached to their what. It's attached to their title, their position, their identity. I'm a Navy SEAL, I'm a football player, I'm a C-level executive. And then when they lose that or move away from that title or that what, their ego has a really hard time trying to figure out, like, who am I really? And
Yeah.
that's a difficult transition for a lot of people. And I think you even talk about it in the book. Say when you did make the decision to leave the SEALs, you were faced with a bunch of different choices and you had to figure out, who's the person that I really want to be in this world.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Look, I mean, there's
Yeah.
no exaggeration. We're all human, and to some degree, we all want to be appreciated and have the world see us as successful. It's just that sometimes we need that seven word description of who we are, because the world can't get past the seventh word. And so that we when I got out of the SEALs and I went to Bridgewater Associates, I went from running a 2,000 person task force, my own jets and planes and automobiles. And when I said jump, people were already on their way up and saying, "How high, sir?" And like, I'm exaggerating, of course, but that, then I went to Bridgewater and I had no direct reports and I had to go get my own pencils and whatever. And that was so amazing and awesome, because it kind of taught me a lesson I was 41 at the time, but like taught me a lesson about, like, do I really care? And I didn't care for me, but I will say, like a lot of veterans, as they get out of the military, wrestle with with that what. But the thing is, my who has never changed. And while in the SEAL teams, I'm a person who I was a person and still am a person who just wanted to create impact in the world and help other people to be successful. And I've seen that same thing in my career in the private sector now for 13 years. And so it's thematically exactly the same. And a lot of people say, Mike, how do you compare the SEAL teams to business? It's exactly the same. I mean, you're trying to create an outcome. You're figuring out what resources and risk do you throw in the mix to go achieve the outcome. And it's really no different in business than in the SEALs.
Yeah, you start off this conversation with the importance of who you want to be. In the book, you talk about one of the first things you talk about is who you want to be. And I think what you just did with this conversation is when you show up to that question, you cannot answer that question of who you want to be if you're not honest with who you are. And who you are is a conglomerate or a series of experiences, good and bad, and relationships, good and bad. I've always found that the people that want to be somebody that understand who they are and why they are who they are, not that you can't change, they're much more successful in that exercise, if that makes sense to you. And I'm just speaking from experience. I spent a lot of time in my life focusing on who I want to be. And I realized, and a lot of times who I wanted to be was heavily influenced by who I was and whether I liked that or not. And so without getting too heavy on it, I think if you're going to do the exercise, you might as well go all in. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. I totally agree with you, John. And if you think about those those Myers-Briggs tests, or whatever personality test that you go take, the biggest error in those is whether you are answering who you actually are or who
100%.
you wish you were when you're taking the test. Right?
Yes.
Like I always come back as this like ESTJ, like, oh, classic leader. Well, is that because I want to be that or because I am it? I don't know, but that's like that.
Those tests get pretty good now, Mike. There's some that Johnny and I have given to some, to salespeople when they come into companies, and it actually asks the question so many different ways that there's a distortion index, and it tells you, whether or not the person's answering it the way they are or the person that they want to be.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you actually see a real gap in integrity when you get that diff, right? Because if you align really around the who and you can answer like that, then those kinds of factors end up really, really converged.
Yeah. Now, when you've led people in the past, Mike, this was a self-reflection for you, but if you could turn it on the other ear on leadership, when you meet people at different stages, when they're either dealing with who they've been or who they want to be, and there's that successful transition of understanding who you are and where you've been and where you want to go, did you see any correlation in the SEALs, in business, any advice that you could give people that on how to do that exercise and do it really well and do it honestly, and is there a correlation to people that do that well that that are higher performers? I've read some statistics. I don't want to offend, but I've read some statistics that when they did some personality studies on some of the SEALs in the early days, that there was a very fine line between I forget, without being offensive, like not psychotic behavior, but can you help me with that? You probably know what the studies say. Those are rare individuals to not be able to feel some of that stuff.
No, it is the tensions that we have in the SEAL teams. Is we are trying to create the world's most potent warriors, and with that comes second order consequences. That is we're not raising librarians, with all due respect to librarians, but
Oh yeah.
and so with that comes sometimes discipline challenges or habits. It's a very hard line to walk, but we are in the SEALs. I describe our job as becoming world class at stopping bad people from doing bad things to
Yeah.
good people. See, but you intrinsically have to be a good person to go recognize what is good and bad, and then to have the ability to step into a hard situation and stop those bad people from doing those bad things. And that at the foundation, that's what being a SEAL is. And I think well, let me pause and see if that makes sense before I go on.
It totally makes sense. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put that on the defensive, but my point was those people that have the ability to understand where they are and where they want to go. And then from a leadership perspective, how you spot that and help people, because I think there's people that they don't have the right glasses on, and they're either trying to be somebody for the wrong reasons, or they're telling themselves they want to be something and they really don't want to be something. They want to be it for somebody else. Can you talk about the leadership implications?
Well, I think at its core, what you're hitting on is the concept of feedback, right? And so I can give myself feedback. Like whenever something goes wrong, I am either 100% wrong or 1% wrong, but it's never zero. And so let's say that all of us were on a team, whether it's the SEALs or in business, and we're trying to go achieve something. We are either going to be wildly successful. Let me simplify the model. We'll either be successful or not. If no matter what, there's great learning to be had on keeping the successful things going and stepping in and being that force to help the bad things to change, to improve the ability to succeed. Now, I've grown up being pretty good at giving myself feedback, far from perfect, but pretty good at being reflective after the fact and saying whether I was 100% wrong or only 1% wrong, and saying, what could I have done better? Most people on the planet very quickly point externally, and then maybe they don't even ever point at themselves. But I think that's the one trait that really, really differentiates in the situation you're talking about is, can I give myself feedback on what could or should I have done differently in a situation with no like emotion and no judgment either. Just say, like, we're all imperfect. I'm just going to try to do better the next time. And then, John, like the other part is, like, if we're on a team, the two of you know me better than I know me because of, like, we've just worked so closely. And so how do I go to you guys and say, hey, like, listen, I just want to hear it. Like, let me have it. Like, what do you have for me? And I know you guys are trying to help me grow. You're not trying to tear me down. You're trying to help me grow. And so what is it that I can and should be doing better? And that's where you take that bias, like we were talking about with the Myers-Briggs or the tests. Like, I can answer how I want to be or how I think I am, but irrespective, if I can get people who know me really, really well to also give me my input, that brings it to life. And that is what I weave throughout Mission Driven, are these a couple, 2 or 3 little exercises that you can either pass by as you read them, or you could turn it into a really long session and say, you know what, I'm going to take a day to think about that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And just going back to the what and the who, there's nothing wrong with trying to get to the what you want, as long as you know you're focused on who you are. But one of the things that I found in my life, Mike, is when I do along the journey of getting to the what that I want, it does, because of the experiences, the challenges, the frustrations, the disappointments, getting to the what actually has changed the who I am.
I agree with you, and you're bringing up a really good point. It's one I've wrestled with in my life. Is to say just to keep all the W's, throw them all in. Is say the why. Sometimes we optimize for things that on the surface look like we're trying to make ourselves look really large and awesome and cool and successful and whatnot. And the thing is, sometimes those are the things that actually unlock your ability to have more impact later. Let's use, for example, earning money. Like, you know what? A lot of people like to earn money for different reasons. But what we all strive to do is get to a point where we have moved beyond our paycheck to paycheck or year to year kind of life, and have some sort of savings. And then ideally to figure out, what do you use that savings for? And the thing is, once you make a certain amount of money, really all you're doing is thinking about impact in the world and be able to donate money or be charitable or quietly help people. And so on the surface, like I might care a lot right now about comp, and that could be perceived as like, oh, that guy's just a money grubber, or you could say, no, like what it is actually I'm trying to create freedom and optionality for my future. I don't know what my future is. I don't know what my family's future is. And I don't know what impact I want to have from a charitable perspective. But in all cases, earning more money now gives me more options and ability to go help other family members, I'm droning on to say the
But
same
it could
thing.
go away the other way. Like you tell a great story, tell the Dan Hurley story.
Yeah, well, this first of all, Dan Hurley has become a really good friend of mine. He is a good friend of mine. I met Dan after he read Never Enough. Dan reached out and said, "Hey, Mike, we have a bunch of friends in common. We haven't met." He just called me out of the blue, like, "Hey, Mike, this is Dan Hurley. I coach the UConn basketball team." I'm like, "Dude, I know who you are. You don't need to do the rest of that sentence, And but I'll tell you, this was before they had won any of their recent national championships. And he's like, "Listen, man, I'd love for you to come in and talk to my team about." Leadership, culture, what does it mean to be elite? What's it mean to be a real team? And it's so fun. I've done it. I'll tell you, the mistake I made was they were like 8,000 to 1 odds preseason to win the championship. I failed to put $100 on them, but so that's my big investment miss. One of my many big investment misses in my life. But I really I could go on and on about what did I tell the team, but there were lots of things. One of them was like, think about in this team of 15 people in this small little room with 3 coaches, 18 people in the room. Think about the person in this room who you like the least. Don't say the name out loud, but there is an answer to that question. And it might not be that you dislike somebody, it might be, but it might be that you just, who's the last person you would gravitate to spend free time with? When that teammate calls you and says, "Hey, does that person even need to finish their sentence?" The answer, if you're a real teammate, is you don't need to finish your sentence. Like when either of you call me and are like, "Hey, Mike, I need some help," I don't need to listen to the rest of the sentence. My answer is yes. And that's how I approach every single person in my life. And I think that when you pour energy into people like that, then when you do need help or you need something, it just comes back to you. That's how I think. And so
it creates more of a team environment. But going back to Dan Hurley, the piece I wanted you to talk about, which was along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, is the offer he got from the Lakers.
Oh yeah. No, so Dan so this is exactly the purpose of writing Mission Driven. Like Dan Hurley wins back-to-back college basketball championships, first time in years that had happened. And he's of course getting coveted, and the Lakers offer him, I think it was like 60 or 80 million bucks a year or something like that, or a contract, and like an absurd amount of money. And the thing is, like talking to Dan was like, I don't have, like, Dan, I don't have your answers for you. What I have are the questions you need to ask yourself. Like, how much do you care about coaching 28-year-old multimillionaires versus 18-year-old, very shapeable, very influenceable younger people who still have are more moldable. Those are two very different things. That's just one dimension of that question. And so without replaying the whole conversation, but with Dan, I'm sure he'd be fine with me sharing most of it. But the headline is, you think about all of these different, we all make pros and cons lists and things like that. And I don't have your answers. I just have the questions. And I remember hanging up with Dan on Sunday night. I knew what he was going to do, but Dan told me, even like this conversation has been incredibly helpful. And I'm still not totally sure what my answer is tomorrow morning. And I'm like, Dan, don't tell me your answer. I don't want to be a person who's been officially told before the news comes out, but I know your answer, because the way that you have the conversation, you can hear what motivates people and what gives them energy and what gets them fired up.
Yeah. And what's cool about that story is later on in your book, in chapter 9, because Dan, the story for everybody that's listening to the podcast is Dan decided to stay at the University of Connecticut and try to go for a 3rd consecutive championship, and turned down an amazing offer from the Lakers. But in chapter 9, you talk about, and this could apply to Dan or not, you could fail at the what, but still be the who you want to be.
that like that you've really done your homework. I'm not surprised, but I am always impressed by you guys. It's exactly the point, because who cares that he didn't win the third
Right.
back-to-back championship? Because the fundamental who is unchanged. Dan is a tremendous human being. I tell you this from being I have infinite respect for the guy, just like I do a lot of my friends. But he really knows who he is, and what makes him tick and what gives him energy. And I think that we as humans should count ourselves fortunate when we really do have the answers to that. And that's what Mission Driven is intended to do, is to help tease that out, help people tease that out for themselves.
Well,
Yeah.
I like in this example that you guys have been talking about with Dan and with others, it's like there's a concept in psychology called hedonic adaptation. And what that means is no matter what the what is, it's never going to stay with you. And they've done studies on this. So what you think you're going after, it's why there's so many examples of people that climb the mountain and then they're struck with, well, what's next? It was who they were in the process of pursuing a what that always lasts longer. And it's just we're not set up that way as society. But you can ask him, you can just ask your friends, you can ask yourself, when you bought that car, when you bought that property, when you bought those clubs, when you bought the what, the stuff, when you got the stuff or you achieved the what, it's fleeting. But
Yeah.
the who in the process, without getting too, philosophical, the who doesn't fleet. The who stays with you. And that's a tough lesson to learn if you're one of those people that are, jumping from mountain to mountain, and some people can use it for positive. I'm going to go to the next mountain. I'm going to go to the next mountain. Well, when the mountains run out, are do you ever look at who you are during that process, or just there's no more mountains?
I'm smiling and laughing. I'm reminded of a friend of mine who I won't name on this publicly. He runs one of the large financial services institutions in New York City, and he's a very benevolent person who really just thinks about impact. An amazing, like a brother to me, but like a good bit, 15, 20 years older than me. And we were on his plane going to an event to go do lots of great things. But he said, hey, he joked, he said, "Hey, Mike, you know the difference between cocaine and flying private? You can quit cocaine." I'm not saying he's ever done cocaine, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, once you like it's your hedonic, whatever that big word that I didn't
Yeah.
understand was like the point is, like, as you get used to more and more in your life, it's the next thing that matters and the next thing that matters, and it's like, yeah, where does it stop?
But you have to know who you are. So I was at a company. I was the chief revenue officer. We got acquired by a very big company for a lot of money. And 3 months later, the ex-CEO asked me to go play golf. So I went to play golf. I came home. My wife said, "Well, how's he doing?" And I said, "He sounds so unhappy." She said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "He told me how he bought a condo in Florida. He bought another house near where he lives. He bought another house down at the end of the cul-de-sac to store cars. He bought 2 motorcycles. He joined 3 golf clubs." And I just thought, when I was listening to him, like, wow, you still don't know like who you are. You just buying stuff to get this like rush for like a week or two, and it's over.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I that's why that who really matters. When I hire people, I like to describe really just 3 circles. It's what gives you energy, what are you good at, and what does the business need. And when I'm the hiring manager
Mm,
and I look at those 3 circles, the thing that people usually don't know is what gives them energy. They'll
yeah.
tell you all day long at what they're good at. They'll be right and wrong about different parts of that. I know what we need as a business, otherwise I wouldn't be in that conversation. But the circle about what gives you energy is the thing that people can't describe. And the thing that I know is, the closer we can align what gives you energy to the role, the less it's going to feel like work to you.
That's
I
very
think
great point. Great point.
it's such a great point, and I think a great way to tease that out, because I'm a big favor of that. I find that the most successful people in the world are the ones that wake up in the morning and they believe that, um, not only what they do matters, but that, like for me, I say that, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like that. And so I have the energy. And I wanted to try to figure out how to do that, like in interviews, like ask people. And here's what I found. I love to ask people tell me about the job that you like the most. And I ask them so they can all tell me about the job they like the most. And then I ask them why. But man, I got to tell you, when I get some incredible information, when I say, tell me about the job that you like the least and why, or when I see employees today in my company, what do you like most about what you're doing? And what do you like least? I always ask them to like most because it's people bubbly and talk about it. But I'm telling you, what you really find is it's basically what they're telling me is this stuff gives me energy. So I can do it in my sleep, or I can do it like it doesn't take any energy to do it. As a matter of fact, it gives me energy. And this stuff sucks the life out of me.
Right.
And again, what I love about getting back to your book, you've brought these unbelievable principles into two big things: the long game and the short game. You can't play golf without a long game and a short game. You can't play life without having a long game and a short game. And when you bring those two together and you understand how they coexist, I think that that's what I just love about your book is that it's purposeful, like that's in the book. It's talking about being purposeful, but the long game is some of the stuff that we've been talking about, and then the short game for me, in some of your examples, is it's the work. Like it's a muscle. Like you got to feed it. So if I have a situation here that's sucking the life out of me, I got to figure out how to minimize the suck of that. And I got to figure out how to point myself, like you said, where's the need? Where's the opportunity? Where's my energy? Could you give those three circles again? Because I thought that was awesome. Give those three circles.
Energy? What gives you energy? What are you good at? What does the business need?
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
So I love how you brought those two together in the book.
Yeah, you also talk about meta skills, and also in the book, and also you talk about meta plan. But let's talk about meta skills and attributes that a lot of people have. One of the things that you talk about, and Johnny and I are big on this when we were hiring people, is you talk about the fact that change is a constant, right? And so career plans can change, you'll change, society changes, your product changes, the market changes, the competition changes. And you just see people in life many times that just can't adapt. They can be coached. They'll say, yeah, I got it. I'm ready to go. And then and they don't change, they don't adapt, and they kind of get left behind. And you see that in sales a lot when the products change, competition change, prices change, messaging changes, who you call on changes. And you need to what your book says, you need to develop new skills and you need to adapt.
That was one of the things I really learned in the SEALs from age 21 on up. Like we first talk about what's the outcome we're trying to achieve. A lot of people confuse activity with outcome. They think activity is work. Like, actually, I want to build a team that does the least amount of work to achieve the goal. Mm-hmm. Because then we can either be off and have leisure or go work some more and go achieve more. And I think that adaptability, Mac, that you're talking about is the most important thing, because as long as we're agreed on the outcome, the situations on the ground are going to change so much over whether it's over an hour during a mission or over a week in the markets, or a month, or 6 months. The thing is it's going to change. Mm-hmm. And that ability to kind of be what you need to be in the moment to go achieve the goal is one of the meta skills that matter, as I wrote about.
Were they still teaching you the von Moltke back in the day with the no plan survives contact with the enemy? Was that still being taught in the academy?
Yeah, well, it was, but the thing is, like, that was the starting point. Like, we just knew that we created, and that, I write about, like, I've spoken about, like, you need one plan. It's the meta plan. Like, you could create 1,000 plans, but the thing that I'm sure of is that as soon as you create N plans, you're going to get hit with the N+1 thing. So it's really, what are the fundamental attributes that make up all the different plans? And so how do you in the moment say, okay, we're going to laser focus, here's what the on the outcome. Do we all agree on the outcome? Yes. Okay, how do we identify as many paths to the goal as we can? Okay, here are 5 different ways we could do it. All right, now let's weigh the pros and cons of each of those. How do we have a process that lands us on which one of those paths that we're going to pursue to get us there? Because what we're going to do is mitigate away as much risk as we can on all of those paths, and we're left with one decision. It's really risk versus reward. And to say, what risk or what resources do we need to put into the equation to achieve our outcome? That's the bulky thing, is really like, to already know that the plan is going to change is what enables your success.
I think that's what I love about that part that you're making in your book in mission-driven individuals, or mission-driven, is that for the human condition, I mean, we're purpose-built for change. We are purpose-built for change, but psychologically, I mean, we're, as a species, it's amazing adaptation, right? But psychologically, the impermanence of change, people suffer with that. And for me, what I've found is that most people suffer with that knowledge that nothing stays the same. Everything's going to change. I mean, the ultimate is we're going to die. Nobody gets out of here alive. And like, how many people, when we go through our lives, and what we're going through is like, you'll deal with people, including myself a few years ago, that just absolutely did not want to talk about, whether you're going to die or what's going to happen or what you believe, or well, I don't want to go down that path, but it's a constant reminder of, we as humans resist change psychologically. But I found that the people that are the most elite are the ones that, I don't want to say like embrace change, but they're aware, they're prepared for change. And again, in your book, the long game and the short game, the long game is the plan, and the short game is having skills to deal with the change.
Well, if you think about, I love what you're saying. If you think about why are people afraid of change, it's usually because we're afraid of how we're going to look to our friends, teammates, colleagues, etc. And we overestimate the negative perception that our colleagues and friends and teammates are going to have when something doesn't go well.
So good.
That's the reason that we get afraid of that. And the thing is, if you can step back and say, wait a minute, you know what? I'm going to go try this super hard thing. My friends are going to think less of me if I try a super hard thing and fail. If fear of failure is the really where what we're the element of what we're getting to. And in the SEALs, that's where, like SEAL training, my class starts with 120 guys, 19 finish. The 19 have in common that every day we're being thrown some sort of a thing that you think you probably can't do, but then you have to tell yourself, no, I'm sure I can do this. Tie your hands and your feet behind your back and go survive in the 15 feet of water for an hour, and like, that's a real thing. Like, okay, that's just one day. That's an hour of SEAL training. Like, some people can't do that. They freak out or whatever. But like, when that whole thing is done, you say, okay, I actually, sure, I learned how to like bob up and down in a 15-foot pool and breathe for 4 seconds as my head comes out of the water. But that's not actually the thing you're learning. What you're learning is, I'm going to try this really hard thing, and I'm going to get better because I'm going to be better in a hard situation and be better with asymmetric or imperfect information.
That's what I love about the SEALs training. I love this about corporations that understand, like, I can't remember who it was, whether it was Netflix, or I know that our guy over at Shopify talked about like Monkey Day or whatever that is, and I think Netflix did it too, where they just showed up one day and the company purposefully, it was like a Navy SEAL move. The company purposefully like threw wrenches into the system. So it's not going to work, like in flight simulators and things like that. People put people into situations to prove to themselves that not only are you adaptable, what I love about companies that say, at the end of the day, they kind of look at each other and say, you're purpose built for this. See, like, you're doing this. And it's not just, it doesn't have to be so extreme as the SEALs. I would say to companies right now, what are you doing to put your people in that environment to kind of force change, and with an outcome of people feeling great about their capability to get to another level?
Well, let's take it in the sales world to to win and loss diagnoses. We very rarely diagnose things that we won because we won and we don't want to spend our time
100%.
on that. But like to spend time as an individual or a sales team and say, what did we do right? And identify the 5 or 10 reasons why we won. That's important. But more important is when you lose, do you have the good hygiene as a team to really have honest conversations of why we lost? Every salesperson is going to say it's because of the product, and every product person is going to say it's because of the sales team. And the thing is, like, how can you rise a level above that and be really like emotionlessly agnostic about really saying what's best for the organization, not just like what could we as a sales team have done better? And those are hard conversations. It's no different than a SEAL platoon coming off of an operation and saying, here's the 100 things we could have done better. Do we do that as individual sales, individual, processes, if you will, or just your own self-reflection, or do you do it as a team? I think it's one of the most important things that will help you get better in that long game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's sorry, Johnny. I don't know if that's if I saw it on one of those SEAL shows or whatever, but I thought they called it like a hot wash. Is like right after a mission, they get together and they're still bleeding. They still have stuff all over them. They still got the dirt over them because they want to get to the closest time to the feedback. And I just found that so refreshing. And I had a broker of mine after one of the times when I was losing the impermanence of change in the stock market was not helping me. And we talked about the hot wash. Like, I want you to remember this moment because we're discovering, John, your threshold of risk. We're discovering your threshold of, pain or anxiety. And so we called it like a hot wash. And it was like, okay, what is it that you don't like about the situation? What do you want to do differently? And I thought that was really, really powerful. And I like to do it like you said on, I think people do a pretty good job of loss analysis, except I think that every loss is an orphan. Johnny and I talk about this, and every win is like has 1,000 parents. But the wins, I think, are huge because, when you go back to a customer and talk about losses, it's going to be like a Senate hearing. They're going to put their hand over the microphone and ask what they can say, and then say, hey, it was really close. It was like 50, it was 51-49. It was so close. You guys were awesome. But the win reviews, when you go to a customer and you say, tell us where we're better than we think we are. And that's cool. And I think the most important ones is tell us where we're not as good as we think we are. Like in a competitive situation, like where did you see us not being realistic about our difference between us and the competition? I've gotten such incredible information from customers after the fact because they've already made the decision for you. You have to be successful in their eyes. They're going to tell it to you straight. So I would just encourage people to do that.
It's all in how you ask the questions, right? And it's like we all as humans have one thing perfect, which is a radar for when people are building us up and when people are trying to tear us down.
That's so good.
And so like that is where like that is the most important thing in those loss conversations. And in the SEALs, like we don't let you get away with missing that accountability. There's no orphan. Every single thing can be traced back to a person. And so you have to connect the bad outcome, the bad thing that happened, to one or however many individuals are accountable or caused that bad outcome. A lot of times those are the harder conversations, but when you do that in a manner that builds people up, that's where the magic is. And this is one of the things I try to teach younger SEALs as we were doing these debriefs is like, be real, be like say everything you've got to say, but do it in a forward-looking manner that is fixing the future, not a backward-looking manner that is just making you feel good because you're getting to tear an ounce of flesh out of a guy who's just made a mistake.
Yeah, you talk about that in the book about communication, and you say there's an age-old SEAL team saying where platoons are made of 16 men, and you say when 15 men are wrong, look in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah. I've had to look in the mirror more than
Because you
once in my
haven't spoken
career.
up. You haven't
Yeah,
said your say. Yeah.
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 That's how you learn and grow, man.
Yeah.
You
So
guys were talking
just
earlier,
going
John,
back. Yeah, go
about
ahead, Johnny.
before that you were talking about those life skills. I didn't want to miss this because I thought this was powerful. So we're talking about the long game and the short game in the book. And when we talked about change and who you want to be, if you're striving for becoming who you want to be constantly, and I don't think we're ever really whoever we want to be. I think the healthiest people are the ones that are trying to, continually to improve themselves. But what you're going to see is you're going to see that change creates an adaptation of skill sets. Now, it's always amazing to me, like my friends over at the Shift Group, J.R. Butler, give a little plug for J.R. Butler and the Shift Group, that they hire former military and former athletes. And sometimes it's amazing to me is that this is a population of people that has such incredible adaptable skills, but they're the last ones to know it, if that makes sense. And the reason why the Shift Group is so good is they get these individuals, they know what those skill sets are, they know what they've been through, and they connect those people back to that understanding of that adaptability, get them comfortable and confident to talk about those skills. And I've just thought, man, that's good for not just SEALs or football players or baseball players or what have you. It's good for all of us because adaptive, transferable skills and foundational skills that are transferable are really, really powerful in a court, and also with learning a bunch of new skills. But in life, I find that it's more the adaptability of skills and then the openness to learn new skills. But if you don't have those traits, you're going to get stuck.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't know, JR at the Shift, but like a group, but like who
You
ya
got to
is
check
what
them
I would
out,
say.
dude. You probably got a lot of friends or a lot of young people that are exiting the military, and I'll connect them to you. The results are incredible. They're killing it in the business world.
It sounds like he's closed the biggest problem with transitioning out of the military is to connect the vernacular between the
100%.
business world and the military world. You've got the foundational attributes that who again doesn't change. You've got thousands of people getting out of the military every year who have the discipline, the work ethic, the drive. But this is really one of the reasons I wrote Mission Driven, because I talk about having, I love positively impacting people I know. But frankly, I've been asked so many times, I get hit on LinkedIn all the time, can you talk to this 16-year-old person or my niece or my nephew who wants to this, that? I can't do everything that I'm asked to. And I feel bad. I wish I could. So the acid test, I think, for a life well lived is how many people who you've never met have you positively impacted? Have you positively
Wasn't that the
impacted somebody that you've
John
never
Connor
met?
story? Tell them the
And
John Connor story.
that's the story. I don't want I laid that out in the book, and I tell you, I remember standing at this podium, like really struggling to hold it together, but knowing that I because Mrs. Connors was like in the front row, and I don't want to. I know everybody listening is like, what? But like I was at John Connors was a Navy SEAL who was killed in Panama in 1989 on the runway of Paitilla. I had never met John. The quick version is I attended his funeral, and he went to the college that I went to, and seeing that the SEAL community rally around and in this hard situation, I thought there's something special here. And I learned more about John, and I had never met his family, but John, even though I never met him, influenced me to be a SEAL. And so, I don't know, 30 years later, I'm at a fundraiser because there's another great human is building a team of people are building a statue to John in his hometown of Scituate, Mass. And they're raising funds. And I spoke at a fundraiser, and I was able to stand at that podium and say, Mrs. Connors, like, I am here because your son, John, had such a positive impact on me, and I never met him. So like to me, that's the power. And so back to the book, like I think about all these SEALs that are getting out who I get referred to, and I say like, hey, Mike, thanks for taking the 30 minutes for a call with me. All I want to do is, after I leave the SEALs, is to have impact. I want to work with a team that's really cool and mission driven, et cetera. like I can't work with that. Like that's just not like granular enough to like help you find that next step. And that's why I've got this kind of framework, which is too long to go into right now, but that's what's in the book and some of those exercises that help tease that out and think, what do you go do as you know your who?
Awesome.
Do you have Johnny? Are you still going? Are you? Because I got another question. I can't read your
No,
face.
I just wanted, like, because our audience, we always talk about, hiring traits more than
Yeah.
the skills that somebody has or the knowledge. And Mike says that, if you hire somebody with the right traits, they're transferable into any other, arena. And that's something that you and I always believe. And he talks about four, really key traits: agility or adaptability, which we already spoke about, but he also speaks about resilience, being intentional with your emotions, and then work ethic. You call it drive, hunger, and curiosity. I always call it a PhD: persistence, heart, and desire. And I always say I want to hire somebody with a PhD.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about resilience, intention with your emotions, those types of things? They're so important.
Yeah, resilience I think is the art of getting up after you've been kicked down. And I don't know, I've never said it that way, but like, my grandfather was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th,
Mm,
1941.
mm,
Wow.
And he imparted so much wisdom on me before he left the planet in 2009. But his spirit like is still like deeply in me. And the things that I've learned anyways, the with the resilience point, he told me, Mike, when you're having a hard day, the best thing to do is go find somebody who's having a harder day and go help him or her. And what it really does is it gives you perspective that your problems are not as bad as you think they are. No matter what, like I know there are a lot of people with a lot of problems. We could list a plethora of problems, but it's that age old classic thing of like, if you could bag up all your problems, put them randomly in the center of a room with 30 people, would you take the random bag of problems or would you take your problems? We generally would all grab our own bag. We
Yeah.
don't want somebody else's problems. We know how to size them, how to think about them, and um, and so I think that with resilience, it's a matter of turning our problems into opportunities. And that is a mental thing. I know it isn't easy. But the thing we were talking about earlier around mindset and making a difference, it's me. Like I've buried 15 very dear friends. I wake up way too early on a lot of mornings. I'm reminded on Instagram or LinkedIn almost every day of some sort of an anniversary or one of my friend's daughter's graduation because she's now through college, and when she was 11 when he left us. Like this is every freaking day for me, and it is really hard. I might seem somewhat normal to the audience. I carry a ton of weight, and my weight that I carry is I'm so fortunate to be here. Do I live a life worthy of my friends who are not here anymore? And
mm,
and do
mm.
I and am I doing enough for their families? Am I doing enough for them? And
Yeah.
I'm blessed to be here and be able to do that. But I could either feel sorry for myself and cave and look down and in and crumble, or I could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to get after it. I'm imperfect, but I'm going to go write a book. I'm going to donate all my profits to charity. I'm going to pay off mortgages. Like those are the choices you have in front of you. And trust me, it might sound easy because the book's published, but like, man, when I was reading the Audible, like I won't give this story away on the podcast, but in the very last chapter, I've got a letter in there that was written to me that even when I read the Audible, I couldn't get through it. I had to stop like 3 times and be like, we
Oh,
got to retake this. I just
I'm
couldn't get
sure.
through it.
I'm
And
Mm.
sure.
so,
Yeah.
anyways, but that's resilience.
Well, what
Yes.
about now? Just hearing your emotion and thank you for being so real. Intentional with your emotions. This is a really critical one. I want to hear your philosophy on this, please.
I think it's simple. It's always being able to control where do you set the dial on the emotion. For
Mm.
example, um, when I commanded a special operations task force in Afghanistan, I very, very vividly remember exactly the 2 times that I came in and I raised my voice to someone or people in the room. And what I did before walking in, just to be that way, was I told like my second in charge, Rocky Russell, amazing human being. Like I said, hey, listen, like here's what I'm about to go do. Like, so the ability, like, are you always controlled and measured? You know, I thrive, or I pride myself on being in really hard situations, and that makes me calmer. You know, like I slow things down, and I say, it's part of it is training. I'm sure a lot of it is like what I've been through or whatever, but the way that you, the way that you create intentionality, it's important because that's what maximizes the probability of success.
Mm.
When you become unhinged and deviate from your ethics, your way you want to communicate with people, you deviate from your morals, or you make bad decisions, like that's when things break down. And so those situations, of that intentionality are opportunities for us. You know, think about any time we've been think about road rage situations. Like, let's all admit it. Like, we've all at one time in our life had road rage, you know, like somebody's cut us off, or different degrees of road rage. I mean, I actually had somebody pull a gun on me on 95 about a week ago. Like I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like, it wasn't, on honest to God, it wasn't me. I
And
knew the
what'd
whole
you pull out?
situation.
What'd you
But
pull out?
But like, I stayed totally calm. I called the cops. Well, I gave them the phone number. Like, and I'm like, okay, I've been shot at. Like, this gun, it's not pointing at me. It's being brandished at me. But you know, this was a guy that pulled up behind me, and I wouldn't move out. I couldn't
Oh
move
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Like, couldn't. And then he went around, and you know, it's just like, does this knucklehead know who he's dealing with? You know, like,
Yeah.
anyways.
Well, what's amazing to what you're saying is being intentional with emotions. I mean, Johnny and I talk about this. We have different personalities, and Johnny's, I think, he does a really good job of being intentional with his emotions. And I'm still learning. I'm 62, and I'm still learning. This is who I want to be. Is I got a little road to go. But what I found is, in kind of like the long game and the short game. In the short game, what I'm realizing is when emotion comes into play, it takes up space in my prefrontal cortex, which is my decision making. And that is fact. I went and studied that. That is fact. The minute that you can't regulate your emotion, it draws from other parts of your brain, and it draws from the decision making part of your brain. That's why in the SEALs, they try to put you in all those situations to help you lower the emotion, because that increases the capacity, the blood flow, and everything to your thinking brain. So when I read that part of your book here, it just meant so. I think our listeners, if you can do anything out of this and in those characteristics, and you can figure out a way to, I'm not talking about being devoid of emotions, but if you can figure out a way, if you happen to be emotional and outcomes don't happen for you the right way, it's probably because you're making some decisions that are compromised by the emotion. And I just think I think I loved it when I read it, and I think it's really powerful advice.
Well, it's like, think about in those hard sales situations. The customer says something that you don't
100%.
want, that they shouldn't say, or you get or that they should say, and it's news you don't want to receive. Like, your ability to kind of stay calm and collected and hyper logical is only going to serve you better, because you can quickly say, okay, how can I stay in the mix here? How can I not get, not get X'd out of this potential deal? How can I, like, how do I win still? Like, and that is really important, because also at the end of it all you're ever really doing is selling trust. No one is actually selling technology. What you're actually doing is selling
Great
trust.
point.
And are you somebody who the customer wants to be around and wants to have on your side? That is way more important than anything else. And I think when you're that person, that like amplifies your probabilistic ability to win massively.
Let's leave with a little bit of a fun story, Mike. So we've been talking about pushing teammates, being driven, having fun, and also how life changes. Tell us the story about you racing a new SEAL named Will Pipkin. Let's leave it with that. It sounds like it was a fun story to read.
It was fantastic. So we got to Iraq. This is a Iraq deployment from April of 07 to October, November, something like that, of 07. And I was the deputy commander, second in charge of all special operations in Western Iraq. That's Anbar province, Fallujah, Ramadi, beautiful places like that some people have heard of. But when we arrived in April, the heat of the day was about 110, 115 degrees, but we knew in the summer it would get up to 135, 140. And so it's like you've got to like start acclimating. And so one of the things that that we did was like we didn't have a lot of gym equipment, but we had some, and we created this little weight belt with a chain and with this big, huge freaking military tractor tire that felt like it weighed 3,000 bajillion pounds. And we did a 1 mile race with that thing. And so we were like, all right, who's in? And there was a group of there were a group of 6 younger SEALs that had showed up. And I'm like, listen, hey, here's the deal. Like all the older guys can opt in or opt out at their will. Everybody's going to do their own thing. You new guys, you FNGs, effing new guys, are absolutely, I'm opting you in. And so we went back and forth. The quick version of the story is we kept a leaderboard of what people's times are. And that way, when you had some new guy who was doing the thing in like 19 minutes, when the rest of us were doing it in like, I don't know, 12, I'm making up numbers right now, we can make fun of that person, and it makes the person stronger. Sorry, public shaming is actually, like, I know I talked about, tearing people down or building them up. There's also humor in the whole thing. Like
Yes.
this is just like fun stuff.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to go win this thing. And so we went back and forth on the leaderboard, and myself and this other guy, Will, were constantly moving in front of each other by like seconds at a time. And then it was the day before the day we were coming home, like that evening, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to go one last time. I've been trying to get back on top of Will's time and take first place for like 2 weeks. I couldn't do it. And I was like, I'm done. Like, this is like, Will's better than I am. And I just know it down deep, but I'm going to give it one last try and do everything I can. Long story short, I did it. I came in first place. By like a couple of seconds or something like that. I took over the leaderboard. And I was like, awesome. Now we get on the plane back home to America in 8 hours or whatever it is. And I'll be talking all kinds of trash to all of the new guys. How is this 40-year-old SEAL beating all these 23-year-olds, and so we got on the plane, and I got all the guys around. I'm like, hey guys, listen, like, I got to tell you, like, and I start reading them, like, just poking them in the ribs really hard. And I got news for you. Like, I effing won, and then Will Pipkin goes, hey sir, not so fast. I'm like, what do you mean? He actually packed the leaderboard like with us on the plane with his name on the front. He goes, I got up. I knew you were going to go out last night. And so I timed it so that I would do my last thing literally about 40 minutes ago, right before we went to the plane. I did my last thing and I beat you by 12 seconds, and so he's got this big up on position number 1. And it was such a great story of going back and forth.
Fantastic story.
Humility.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing everything that you shared in this book and your former book, Never Enough. But this book, brand new book, just came out last night, right?
Yeah, yesterday. Absolutely.
Pre-release. Yep. Mission Driven, The Path to a Life of Purpose by Mike Hayes. And
Mike,
Mike, thank you for what you do for, your 1162 Foundation and the Gold Star families. I think it's just amazing, the stuff you do, putting a lot of pressure on yourself, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are very grateful that Mike Hayes is around.
Well, go ahead, John.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, you talk in the book about, living a life of purpose. And since meeting you, I've just been so impressed with that purpose of your life. I heard it in your emotion. I know our audience heard it in the emotion of you talking about those Gold Star families and of your 15 close buddies and, 60 more that you lost. And so I would just encourage people, first of all, this is a great freaking book. Both of those books are great freaking books. So you should buy the book and learn something fantastic. If you heard any of this today, you're just going to learn some. The more time we hang around you, Mike, we just learn more and more. Mike, is there a way outside of the book can we as an audience do more? Like, we'll buy a book, and can we do more? Can we go to a website that has a 501c3 number? Can we donate there outside of the proceeds of the book, or how does that work?
Yeah, first of all, thanks to both of you, even for the opportunity. I cringe when you're saying that. I'm the one who's so impressed by the two of you, and fortunate to call you both friends and teammates in life here. And so thank you for the incredible platform and impact you've built. So yeah, absolutely. Look, you can follow me on LinkedIn, or follow me on Instagram as this is.MikeHayes. X is this is Mike Hayes, no dot in the middle there. But then if you Google, I'll go on to there's a Give Butter site.
Yeah.
So I actually should have been prepared with this.
We'll put it in the show notes, but go ahead. But we'll
Give
put it in
Butter and Google the 1162 Foundation. That's the 1162 Foundation. You won't see much about descriptions or no pictures of women we've helped. None of that. All it is like 3 sentences of what we do, and there's a QR code or whatever, so or a way to donate $1, $5, $100, whatever somebody desires. That is one way we can help. But then also, honestly, at this point, like getting the book out there and getting mission driven out and getting the flywheel going, it elevates the conversation.
100%.
It helps in so many different ways, and all of my profits from Mission Driven go straight to the 1162 Foundation. And please, Amazon reviews, believe it or not, Amazon reviews matter a ton. And so going in and going back into that orders tab in the far upper right corner, clicking orders, finding the book, and then there's like a way to like rate this product or whatever it is. That's super helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. You're amazing, dude. Well done.
No, you guys, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, John Kaplan, and thanks to everyone for listening to another episode of the Revenue Builders Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.